welcome back to another Foxy TV episode. Today we thought we would touch on our top 3 mistakes that we have made in business and the lessons that we've learned from those errors and maybe decisions that we could have made differently along the way.
And hopefully these are going to be some things that those that are going through a similar journey can learn from and maybe avoid, although I'll explain myself soon, but I don't know that they're things that can be easily avoided even if you know they're coming.
So we've been in the business now for 8 years. We've obviously grown. If you've seen our episodes before, you know we've a team of 35-ish staff. We've now got the 5 trucks and have styled almost 1,500 properties this year. Now, that doesn't come without making errors, and I think making those errors is really actually critical to your learning, not just in how to run the business but also to lead the team effectively. So we're going to touch on both of those elements today in our two of the errors we're going to talk about.
Yep.
All right, so first one, we've spoken about this one before, and to be honest, this was a mistake that I made.
This is kind of
a while ago.
This one is the only one that I would actually class as a mistake in the way that we're talking about it. The other ones will explain why they're a bit different, but this was something that we missed. You can explain it, and it actually had impact
tangible
on the
value.
business.
Yeah. So we, year 3 into the business?
Yeah, it was a while ago.
So when I set the business up, I set it up when I was pregnant on maternity leave, decided I didn't want to work for Q Health anymore, and I set up just a trusty old WordPress website on the GoDaddy link, right? Had it all set up, but it just didn't do what we needed it to do with the amount of traffic that came through. So Cody made the decision, I'm not blaming this on Cody, but Cody made the decision to transition it across from that host to a new host, a WP Engine. Now, what that did, we actually had WordPress set up with all its plugins, and it's like online forms that you can do, and we have it set up so you can actually reach out to us and get an online quote request. What that needs to run effectively is have all of the back end linked in properly, otherwise we don't receive the email. Now, when we transitioned it across to WP Engine, it turns out that you need to test everything.
Yep.
And we didn't test anything, and we went for about 6 weeks without any online quote requests. So
Which, by the way, sound like, in hindsight, how did we not notice? But we were busy.
That's crazy.
6 weeks of online quote requests that
we would
went
have at
nowhere.
least 2 a day that come through. So that was a volume of quotes. So I don't know how we didn't recognise when it coming through. I'm pretty sure it was spring. Pretty sure it was crazy. By the time we realised, we had 42 quotes. Requests sitting there in the background. So that, I think that's just under 6 weeks worth. Anyway, thankfully I reached out to a couple did lock in, but if you look at how many what would normally lock in, I think we lost around $20,000 worth of revenue due to that error. It was a team-wide error.
So what did we learn from that, Phoebe? We need to be very careful about how our website backend is working, but I think more than that is every now and then you just go in and check, which is all about making sure that if there is an error, we're catching it early enough that it doesn't have the business impact. But
also, I guess, me recognising that I don't need to be the person that tests that as well. So we've since implemented a number of different websites, obviously the conference that we've run, and Cody does all the testing for that. He makes sure that it's all absolutely perfect and run perfectly. So we make sure that it gets tested now, but it doesn't necessarily be me doing and double checking the emails are coming through perfectly.
Yep.
So sort of let that one go to allow my time to focus on something else.
All right. The next mistake that we thought about when we were trying to think about what the biggest things were mistakes we've made or things we've missed and the impact they've had. This one, like I said, I don't think this is a mistake other than in hindsight it's something we maybe learned that would have been good to know earlier maybe. Yeah. And that is that when it was the first, I want to say 3-ish years, 3 or 4 years when it was a very small team. Phoebe was on site for most jobs. I was in the truck. Like when we had, I think you and Cassie, we had 2 stylists, but you were involved in everything. We had a very small but very efficient, high-performing team. We were very good at what we did, and the people that were with us were all very good at what they did. And that's not to say that we aren't still very good. We have a lot of processes and training and things in place now that we didn't back then. But I think there was a stage where we started to grow. We started to bring in more people. Phoebe and I were less involved in the on-site jobs themselves. And I think we maybe took too long to transition our expectations from what we were capable of doing as a small team to what we needed to do as a larger team, and what things we needed to make sure that the end result for the client, the agent, still was exactly what we needed it to be. But things like how fast we could do a job, maybe, how much prep time we needed or other people needed compared to you who had been doing it for so long. Am I missing anything there? I think it was just
Well, even down to the safety and the handling of stock on site, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
We had a critical turning point. I would say it was a moment that we recognised that we need to. Something that would stick in our mind was creating rules for just rules' sake, like just the sake of having something there.
It seemed silly.
It did, yeah. and it did but. Then you read about making sure that things make sense to the lowest common denominator, right? Making sure that it doesn't matter what level that staff member is trained to, that it's going to get done properly. We had a staff member who, whilst we thought common sense and it was part of training as well, you wouldn't take a heavy tempered glass tabletop from a truck and walk at a significant difference up to a unit for an installation. You would wait for a second person. That being said, that rule wasn't written down on paper. And unfortunately, it resulted in an injury. So we've since learnt from that. I think that was the turning point that we started to bring in some of those rules that you see more so associated with both workplace health and safety. And then on top of that, a whole layer of training. Yeah,
so for instance, in that example, we instantly changed our rule for any of those sorts of glass tabletops or any glass at all. Those are now, even though they already were, now there's a rule in place, 2-man carry. We never want to see anybody doing it by themselves. Things like carrying mattresses in a house. At the start, we knew when to take it careful based on the flooring and making sure that we're not going to damage or scratch timber floors, for instance. But we've had a few instances over the years as we started to grow where that wasn't happening as well with some of the newer people who hadn't had the training. So we had to put in rules that, in that example, mattresses need 2 people carrying them through a house, which again was a pretty common sense thing, but we need to start doing things for, like you said, a larger workforce of different levels of experience, not just a very small, very experienced team.
Yeah, and then on top of it, so something we've had in the styling team for quite some time, but something we're only just introducing into the logistics side of things is having somebody in more of an educator position. I learnt that from my time over at Q Health. So the way that it was structured over there, you had people who ran the department. Alongside those people running the department, so your seniors, was an educator, and that person was obviously responsible for all of the training and the learning. So that's really what we've implemented now to give the reportability and accountability and make sure there's consistency, not just in how the end product looks, but also how they carry and how much they load up a bucket, how they hang the artwork, and how's a safe way to hang something that's quite heavy without having to twist your back. All those types of things is consistently trained to make sure that the safety aspect is taken care of, and not just if you're going to twist your back and lift something heavy, you shouldn't do. Like, the thought process is now far more structured rather than expecting someone to know.
I guess to summarise the learning there for us and for anybody who's looking at growing a business and scaling a team is that you need to consider who you're bringing to your team and their experience level, and that they're going to be different than you are, and you need to build your processes, your training and your expectations around the team, not around what you would do.
Yeah, I think that really goes along with salability too. Having processes, structures and systems in place, it only makes it a more professional outfit. So it only makes it more salable and replicatable later down the track.
Yep. The next one.
Number 3.
Yep.
Yeah, this was a big one for me. You spoke about this too when we went to... Oh no, that was our own conference, when we attended our own conference. We had Bill Nosworthy, and you asked questions about this, right?
Yep.
All right, so this one's team-based. Honestly, the most difficult but most amazing part of running any business, it's your people. And they can be the most difficult people to find. And I did a session with Jenny and Alice, she's the Boost Juice lady, and she reiterated to me, you might go through 12 people to find a unicorn, and that's okay. So finding the right person to find a unicorn, amazing. But what happens when you have your unicorns and things fall out inside the business? And when do you make a decision when to move people on? And how long is too long to retain those people? Now, those questions...
Well, it fits in with, like you said at the conference, what we've kind of spoken about a lot is hire fast, fire faster, which is all around, we make decisions. When you're hiring somebody, it's about guessing. You're getting a little snapshot of somebody. We think we feel good about them. They've got a good resume. We bring them on board. But you don't know that person. And once you start working with them, you start to actually know who they are as a person and how they're going to fit into your team. And if they're not the right person, make that decision very quickly to protect your team culture and the way that your team operates.
So we had a situation, and it was very much, I think, what people refer to as culture cancer company. What do you call it?
Company cancer. I'm not sure. Culture cancer, I guess.
That sounds like really horrible, actually, to say it that way. But basically, something within the business that's going to undo all of that hard work to make the harmonious work together, and there's a disruption in there. And I know this is going to relate to so many people. Something little has happened that has created this disharmonious unharmonious. Why am I trying to say that word?
I'm not helping you.
Unhappiness in the environment, right? And there isn't actually a specific action that has made you want to change somebody's employment within the business. However, it keeps happening. There's a really big wormhole we're going down, and it's bringing everybody down with them. Now, to be able to make those decisions to act on that before it gets to down here is something that I think I've very much learnt. I'm still not amazing at it. We're more in the let's give somebody another opportunity before we can recognise, hey, we're actually both already at the same point. Both people are actually at the point where they want to separate ways, but we're like a one more time type situation.
Yeah.
We had that situation, should have made the decision earlier. And it's happened not just...
A few times,
a few times. And it's something that I think deep down you get to know somebody, they've been here for a year and you know them really well, and you feel like you're really letting them down, and that's a really hard decision to make. However, the impact that it has on you as a person, as individual, as the team, and then outwards from the business from the people who they're seeing day to day, has a far bigger effect. So learning to eat the frog and make the decision and act on it early has been something that I would say is a lesson that we have very much learned.
And I would say this is the one I mentioned at the start, that knowing that now doesn't make it easier. And I mean, that's not true. We are getting better at it, but at the same time, if I'm speaking to somebody who's in a situation like that, to say to them, look, you have to make a decision and let somebody go for the benefit of your team long term, they can hear that, and still that's a very difficult bit of advice to follow, because it's never a comfortable situation letting somebody go, even if you know it's not the right fit. Like you said, we held on to people far too long in the past. And the impact on the culture was not just once we made the decision they were gone and it was fixed. It actually dragged on because it had impacted our culture in a way that it probably took a good 6 months, I think, to get back to where we wanted it to be. So that's been a big impact over a long time.
And it's not wholly negative. The growth that I've had, and you'll say the same thing, growth that we've had from events like that, it's quite significant. So the learnings from that as a leader, to learn to not give so much of yourself as the business starts to expand. You're not out every day with everybody individually. You're not doing it side by side. To learn to lead people with that in mind, to learn to be friendly and not necessarily friends, to have your executive leadership group, a circle of people that you give more to rather than the entire business, but that empowers that executive leadership to have that leadership below you. They're the learnings that we've very much had, and I would say we've come a really long way in the last year with that. And I don't think we could probably be the leaders. I like to think it's very fair and equal, but we couldn't do that without having had those things happen.
Some of the
previously.
downsides. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but they're the top three, I would say.
Yeah, I think they're the biggest ones that have had an impact on us. I mean, the first one, big money-wise mistake. Yep. The other two big things that we've learned and that we didn't get right the first time that had a big impact, but we are learning from. And like I said, I think it's something that everybody will struggle with. People-related problems, issues, mistakes are never far away. It's just one of those things when you run a business, you have to learn.
Yep.